What's up everybody, hope you're having an amazing day so far. I'm your host Phil, and in today's video I'm super excited to show you the brand new drum library which has been released by Spectre Digital called ICON Classic Rock. But let's first roll that intro clip. Wow, what a mix that was. I personally thought it sounded absolutely incredible. The drums were super smacky, super punchy, in your face, and very, very big sounding. That was really cool. ICON Drums Classic Rock. I mean, it's already in the name. This drum library is supposed to create some of the most iconic drum sounds there are out there. And to me personally, especially the Black Album sound and also the load and reload sound of Metallica, when it comes to drum sounds, are one of my absolute favorite drum tones, and that's exactly what I wanted to go for in this particular demo mix, and I thought that the plugin absolutely nailed that. A few words about the company, Spectre Digital, and the plugin itself. So Spectre Digital is the company founded by Glenn Fricker from Spectre Sound Studios. It's part of the Spectre Media Group, which he founded. And yeah, on his YouTube channel, he does a lot of audio mixing related tutorials. He has some, ranty videos with some rather clickbaity titles in regard of tone wood and pickups. And yeah, he stirred up a lot of controversy during the last years, especially with some very bold claims, some of them which I really stand behind, some of them which I'm also divided upon. But I can tell you one thing, when it comes to mixing drum sounds, I really trust Glenn Fricker's judgment, because anytime I see his videos, the drum mixes absolutely hit it out of the park. They really sound awesome, they really sound big, they sound tight, and I learned personally a lot through the audio mixing tutorials which he has released on his channel. So I was really stoked when Alex from Spectre Digital reached out to me proactively and asked if I want to give ICON Classic Rock a try. And with that, we got the obvious disclaimer over here. Spectre Digital has provided the plugin for free. However, I'm not being paid, I'm not being monetary compensated for this video. They just basically provided the NFR license to me, asked if I wanted to do that, and since I anyways was always intrigued by Spectre Digital in general as a plugin company, and especially the drum libraries behind that, namely the Extinction Level Event, but never had the funds to, justify the purchase, I was super into it, and I directly said, yes, let's go on. However, since the product has been provided to me for absolutely free, you're absolutely fair to take anything which I say with a grain of salt over here. You're absolutely fair to do so. However, you're going to get my thoughts and opinions and my impressions which I got by working with the plugin, although I have to say I am not somebody who goes like super knee deep into the subject of programming drums and tweaking all of the different things. I just kind of get away with setting up my sound, being happy with it, or either not being happy with it. And in this case, I have to say, I'm really happy with it. ICON Drums is super flexible, and that not only becomes apparent later on where we're going to check out the drum sounds, but that also becomes apparent in the fact that TCI files are included. Now, to be fair, this is a staple among the industry. A lot of the different drum libraries have that. TCI files are basically files which you can place into Steven Slate's trigger software, and then you can use that to replace the sound of the kick drum which you're recording, or the snare which you're recording, with the respective sound coming out of Icon. I think this is a really cool thing, and I think that the TCI files would also include the toms. At least that's how it regularly goes. I have not played around with this feature yet, but I think it's worth mentioning. Also, this is one of the things which they point out on the website, so just wanted to get that out of the way. Also, which is very cool, is the fact that you can load your own kick and snare samples into the Icon drum library and then blend that together with the pre-existing sounds. Just shows that there's no borders, there's no frontiers to your creativity. Whatever you have in mind, you can achieve with Icon drums. But speaking of Icon drums, let's listen to what it actually sounds like. I now got a Reaper session open up with Icon Drums Classic Rock over here, showing up in all of its glory. This is now loaded into Contact Player, which is one of the industry standards for sample libraries. You can download this for free using native instruments, then going to the product page, going to the free page, then afterwards going to Contact 8 Player over here. It will probably prompt you to download their installer hub native access, which will in turn allow you to install Contact Player, as well as adding the serial number over here, and then installing also your respective drum library. You can see that all of my drum libraries are working on Contact. It is also basically the only way to actually run Icon drums. It is what it is. It comes with some caveats with Contact, so Contact sometimes is a little bit laggy and a little bit buggy, but it's the only thing out there in the market, and we all have to adhere to this. So download this, install everything, and then run Reaper, load the Contact Player VST, and in Contact Player you then have access to the drum library. It's a little bit of a hassle when you are setting this up for the very first time, but once you get a view of how it actually works, it's fairly straightforward. I got now everything set straight out of the box over here. This is what it looks like right out of the box. You got this cool looking kit over here. When clicking on the small arrows, you can choose different pieces of the kit. You can exchange the snare, for example, or you can exchange the toms, and so on and so forth. And by clicking on these individual things, you can then listen to what they sound like. So let's do that first. Let's go through the different sounds of this particular kit, and then I'm going to move to some individual things which I think are really cool with this. So that's already a cool sounding kit in itself. I mean, now I'm going to go ahead and just, select some of the different options which we have. Not all of them, because that would be a little bit too extensive over here. But for example, I'm very curious about the medium tuning snare versus the low tuning snare of the Ludwig Black Beauty. So there's quite some difference in the snares which we got over here. And with the toms, there's something which I find really cool. So we got these regular toms over here. Then we also got the coded ones, which I'm now going to select all of them. And now we also have the towel version. So this is basically putting towels on the toms. I would assume so that you don't have that much of a ring. Really cool thing. I did not see this in any drum library before. So having this, I did not even know this was a thing, that you put towels on toms to make them not ring that much. So that's pretty cool. On the cymbals, we pretty much got what we have over here. There are a few pieces which have like other options over here. For example, the hi-hat and the crashes, I believe it is. So here we can choose between Silgen and TRX. I'm going to leave everything as it is right now because I like the sound, and I want to keep it as faithful to the, let's say, default sound straight out the box as possible. So this is the sound of Icon Classic Rock straight out of the box. I prepared over here a drum loop which has a lot of different elements, so a little bit of tom playing, a little bit of snare playing, kick, cymbals, hi-hat, all of that stuff. So it's kind of a, let's say, generic drum beat which has quite substantial stuff going on. Let's listen to what this sounds like when playing this through Icon Classic Rock. Now, this already sounds pretty cool in my opinion. There's some things which we can set up, but that's for a later part of the video. What I want to now show you are the factory default sounds which we're getting over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll through and just let that drum loop play through. So I'm going to just click on this arrow over here, and every time I click on it, it's going to change the respective drum kit sound. So let's rock again and walk through the presets. So what I find immediately intriguing is that we have a great variety in the different drum sounds which we're getting. So we're getting everything from very processed, very compressed 2000s rock kit to something which is a little bit more open, a little more boomy. I would say more Led Zeppelin-ish with the Oh Yeah kit, for example. So I'm just going to compare the 2000s rock kit, the 90s alt kit, Big and Controlled, and Oh Yeah, because these are the four standouts in my personal opinion over here. Let's start with the 2000s rock kit. Now, having this variety is something which is very unique to Icon Drums Classic Rock, at least from the drum libraries which I have tested so far, which are quite a few, but not all of, obviously. But there are reasons for this, which I want to get into, and I would kind of pin them down. The first standout, in my opinion, on Icon Drums is the very extensive mixing, let's say, GUI which we get over here, or the mixing possibilities. When you go over here in this menu to shell mix and cymbal mix, you can see, of course, we got all of the different individual tracks. That's nothing special over here. We also got a master track over here. But what is very special, I mean, not like super duper special, but it is something which this plugin stands out with, is that we're having a lot of different mixing possibilities individually on the track itself. So when I'm looking at the kick beater, for example, versus the kick over here, versus this, versus that, you can see that at all times I got EQ1, trans, which is a transient shaper, an EQ2, compressor, and then a saturator. And these are individual to the channel strip. So like EQ1, I can set completely different on the kick out than I would set it on the kick beater. So this is like having a huge rack of different EQs, different transient shapers, and so on and so forth in a great quality. Yeah, really cool. You know, like look at the EQ1 settings for the kick beater, then EQ1 for the kick 91A. They look inherently different, and that already tells me that we have a lot of flexibility going on. This can be overwhelming, but for that we got these, these factory default settings, which we can then kind of work our ways across from. We also have on some of the tracks, not on all of the tracks, some bleeding mechanisms, pitch We have one-shot possibilities. We can set the balance, so how much of that particular drum we want to have in other microphones spilling over, like the overheads or the Glyn Johnson method over here, which you can set up in the cymbal mix. What I personally find very cool is that we actually have a difference between the shell mix and the cymbal mix. This makes stuff for me always very easy to kind of separate, because when I'm doing my drum routings, I also take the same approach. I'm separating the shells completely from the cymbals as far as possible, and then doing that individually, kind of, thinking that individually in that regard. So this is pretty cool that we got these extensive. I already played a little bit around with these mixing settings over here. I just want to tinker a little bit around. What I'm now after is, let's just imagine that I want to have the snare sounding way more like the Black Album snare, like that very high-pitched, smacky whiplash type of sound. Now, this over here does not deliver on this quite well, but what I can use is, I can use here the snare top and use the one shot to kind of get over there together with the pitch and changing the transient via the transient shaper. I'm just going to try and play a little bit around. This is not getting the best out of it. This is just showing how you can think about a sound and knowing what tools you have available and then quickly getting over there. So let's just roll this. So that's exactly what I mean. Like, knowing what tools you have, of course, that requires a little bit of experience and getting into knowing what you have actually in the console over here. But it's very easy to use. Like the transient shaper thing was like something which I was like not willing to touch. But then when I played around with it, it became very quickly apparent what's going on over here. I think I could now actually achieve that same, smacky tone, maybe without the one shot. So that when I'm doing like soft snare rolls, that I can still use the velocity. I'm not bound to the one shot. So let's try this. Let's mute the one shot over here. So the one shot is now taken out of the equation. Now I'm going to try to use the transient shaper and the things which I have, just together with the snare available in order to shape my tone that I'm getting exactly what I'm after. It's not exactly the same, of course, but, I can work my way around, get to my results pretty quickly. Of course, this is not about the best sounding snare or something. However, together with the snare 4 as the one shot and setting the pitch quite high on both of them, and then setting this to center so that it not only works on the super high transients, but also works pretty well on normal snare hits, that really makes a big difference. Yeah, truly impressive what you can do over here. Now, this is just a very, very small excerpt of what this is capable of. We can do a lot of different things. We can, for example, fatten up substantially the kit by using the master chain over here. I'm going to go back to the 2000s rock kit, and I'm going to add a lot of makeup gain over here, set the compressor so that it's really hitting hard, and then I'm going to dial down the mix a little bit. So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's not about the best sounding thing, but this is, super cool. This is very intuitive. We got this Pultec EQ, we got this cool compressor over here, we got the individual channel effects which we can use. The pitch is something which is very useful. And yeah, this is one of the standout features in shaping the tone as we need it. Another very cool feature of Icon Drums Classic Rock is the bleed functionality. This is one of the core elements which is being propagated on the webpage as being their standalone thing. The way you can control the bleed seems to be very unique, and I have to say it makes a big difference, a bigger difference than I know of other plugins over here. Let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna again go to the 2000s Rock kit as a reference kit over here. So we got, once again, this. And when I'm on the master track, I got the possibility to purge all the bleed. So I'm taking all the bleed away, no bleed control whatsoever, or I can set all the bleed on. So that means that the snare, the tom, what else do we have? I think some few other elements in the drum kit. They are bleeding into the other microphones, getting picked up by that. That adds a lot of realism to how the drum sound, because remember, when you are recording drums, you're not playing simple samples and then just mixing them together, but you're playing a full coherent kit, and the bleed will necessarily happen. I mean, it's a matter of choice that you don't want to have that much bleed. For example, hi-hat bleed is one of the most awful things which you can think about. So, but there are ways to kind of, mitigate around that, but they're still gonna happen a little bit. But that's also the magic of recording drums, and that's the way they just sound. You're hearing that as one coherent instrument and not as a conglomerate of different things going on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play this drum loop over here, and I purged all the bleed off, so there's no bleed. And once I click on this, you can hear how it sounds with the bleed completely turned on. So let's get rolling. Now, I find especially the snare and the tom get a lot more liveliness, a lot more impactfulness when we turn on the bleed. And this becomes especially apparent on the mixing which I set up for the demo mix over here. So when I now go ahead, so this is the same drum loop, by the way. This is just now a different sound because I already did my mixing in the plugin itself. So it's going to sound a little bit different. Let me see if I got any kind of limiter engaged or whatnot. So yeah, we got a soft clipper. I'm going to turn off the soft clipper because that is post-processing. The other things are just plain limiting the signal. Nothing happening over there. Yeah, what we got over here is the drum loop as you heard it before, but now through the mix of the demo mix. Yeah, and currently we got no bleed on. And here, once again, we got the same thing. The liveliness is drastically enhanced through setting on the bleed on. This is really making a huge difference in my personal perception of how the drums, are working together as one. They're kind of glued together by the bleed on feature. And this is something which I do not find in other drum libraries. In other drum libraries, the bleeding functionality is somewhat annoying, to be honest. And this is the first time that I really, see bleed as something which is useful and adds to the drum sound. So this is really exciting and inspiring for me because this way of working, awesome. Now, we already talked about two things where I think that Icon Drums Classic Rock stands out, but there's one last thing which I think where it really excels against the competition, and that is velocity range. Now, I'm somebody, I always program my drums that they're being hit pretty hard because most drum libraries only get interesting for the style which I'm playing like 120 and above. So round about that range is where things are getting interesting. So that's quite very close to the maximum hardest hit over here. And, you know, Icon Drums does things a little bit differently, and I think that stems from the fact that Glenn Fricker hates the robotic and stale sound of, you know, drum libraries in general. And to showcase what I mean by this, I prepared a few things. I first prepared an drum roll or a drum beat, which is a little bit more laid back and uses a little bit more of that velocity range. And yeah, let's explore that first. Let me check if everything is set correctly. Now we want to have these three pretty much even. Let's go with 100 or 104. There we go. Yeah, now listen to this particular drum beat over here. Now, what I find over here is that there's a lot of dynamic range. Like some toms are hit a little bit harder, some are hit a little bit softer over here. And yeah, that also goes for the snare, especially in this tom part in the end, however, that becomes very apparent how important the velocity range, which I set over here, is and how sensitive it actually is, because the jumps over here are not that high, but it still has like that doop, 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 you know, that feel. So it does have a lot of impact over here. And when we're going over here, I'm just going to take these three snare hits and I'm going to move them around while I'm going to loop. Hang on. I'm going to loop this over here. So I'm going to loop this segment. Yeah. Excuse me. So there's this natural sweet spot around 90 to 110 where the snare lives, ideally a little bit above 100, and anything going above is only reserved for the hardest hits. That's exactly what they also mention in their instruction manual. So yeah, that is really interesting. I've never experienced this before. This, you know, requires me to adapt a little bit in the way I program the drums. So, you know, I just have to adapt to it, basically. But this allows also for a great range of flexibility. And I've showcased this over here in this drum swell. So this is basically just 4 different drums which are swelling, like the snare and then all the toms, just to show the velocity range which we're having. So you can see already this colorful, you know, waves going on over here. And this is what it sounds like. And I think that's really interesting. Like, we barely hear anything when it's in the blue range. So it's like basically just, you know, stroking over with the stick over the tom. And then when you're going up in the envelope curve, you're getting like really strong tones over here. So let's just enhance this a little bit so that that reaches the absolute top, actually. And now I'm going to go ahead and copy this to the other drums as well, because I just want to kind of find out the absolute range which we're getting. So there we go. Hang on. There we go. And so, and let's do the same for the snare as well. So let's go over here, add this to the snare. There we go. Oh, hang on. Seems like I missed over here. Yeah, I totally missed the track. Hang on a moment. Okay, sorry, my bad. Let's go there. Tom 1. This goes to Tom 2. And this then goes to Tom 3. There we go. Okay. Now we're set. Sorry, guys. So this is really cool. This is really realistic in, I mean, you have to be careful how you set the envelope. So you have to be careful with that. But this is really realistic. And I have done a different tryout where I made a cymbal swell first and then a tom swell. Like I like to end off songs with bam, with a big bam, and then a little bit of cymbal swirl going on. And then in the end, a little bit of a tom swirl. Hang on. Yeah, this sounds really cool. The velocity over here, the velocity range which we're getting really works out well in the favor of having a nice dynamic range to, be creative with it and have some cool effects and not, playing a little bit around with volumes and other envelopes. You can do everything fairly easy. And this is something which this plugin really stands out with. I really enjoy the way we're getting this. And I mean, the tones, they speak for themselves. Let's listen again to the demo mix, and I'm going to sometimes solo out the drums and then add the guitars in there. So let's take that. Let's move that out of the way. And then move to the very beginning, and let's go. My closing thoughts are obvious. I really enjoy Icon Drums Classic Rock. This is going to be a staple in my future demo works where I'm doing like demo recordings for different plugins or also for my band. This is definitely going to get some use out of it. Maybe not for the very fast technical stuff. I have to put a little bit more work into getting that sound, but for that big, massive sound, for mid-tempo songs, this is absolutely the first choice, which I would take hands down. I really enjoy what we're getting over here, to be honest. I'm really fascinated by the fact, how affordable these things are now nowadays. I think this plugin now in the current sale, which is going on, like the introductory sale, is $80, and after that, $110. That's not that much money. Of course, it is quite a chunk of money, but if you compare that to Steven Slate Drummer, which is also phenomenal, but that also costing like around about $100, $150 at times, I don't know. I rather would go with this over here. This kind of works very much in the similar range like the Bogren Digital plugins, both price-wise and the use case of it. It has some unique features to it, which hopefully I was able to show in this video. And I'm a fan. I'm super, super excited. I'm very, very grateful to Spectre Digital that they gave the chance for me to check this out. I'm a fan, and I'm really curious now about Extinction Level Event. I gotta get my hands onto that drum plugin somehow. I'm a fan. Yeah, I'm really impressed, I would say. What do you thought about the tones which I'm getting out of this? I hope that I was able to give you a good overview over the tones which you're getting out of this plugin. I think it sounds amazing. Yeah, let me know down below in the comments. If you're using a different drum plugin, let me know that as well, or a different drum library, more or less. Yeah, like, share, and subscribe if you liked what you see. It really helps out. And of course, these type of videos, people, approaching me, asking if I want to check out stuff would not be possible if it weren't for the support of you people out there. So thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate it. And even though I'm at the start of this journey, I would have never thought that it would actually turn out this well. So thank you, everybody, sincerely. With that out of the way, thank you everybody so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you saw. And with that, see you in the next video. Until then, keep it metal.